today,
What's up?
it's Ask Us Anything.
Yeah.
Woo! It's a party. We're going to answer questions. All right. Are you ready?
Yep.
Just for people who might be tuning in for the first time, the source of these questions is actually inside of our training camp in a section called Ask
Us Anything.
Us Anything. So we have cultivated the questions from the last month because we do these once a month. And we're going to answer every single question. And we appreciate the questions that have been sent in. So, are you ready?
Yes.
During the conference, we had a conference a few weeks ago, there were many questions about leverage points. Can you just expand a little bit more on your thinking about leverage points?
Leverage points is a very popular but misguided concept that comes out of predominantly a book written by Meadows and another book written by Senge and the original work of Forrester, which influenced those two latter folks. And the problem with leverage points isn't that they don't exist. They do exist. They're very important. But they exist in mechanical systems where leverage is a thing. They don't exist in these organic systems, right? I mean, they might, if you have a socio-technical system, which is people and, machines,
right?
Then there might be a leverage point in some of those more mechanical aspects of the system. But there's not a leverage point for the whole complex system. And the reason is that leverage, if you think about what is leverage, I mean, leverage is, think about it in real life, right? Say you're wanting to lift this like big heavy thing and you get like a rock and you put this under there and you leverage off the rock, right? You leverage this heavy thing. So you're getting an advantage in the lever. This is the lever and you're leveraging. So you're talking about the point of leverage. Well, yes, it's true. There's tons of leverage points in mechanical systems. But there's not leverage points in these complex and adaptive systems, the ones that we're mostly dealing with, right?
Right.
There are influence points. There are if you want to influence the whole system, there are places that you can influence. But the whole system is really governed by the simple rules that the agents are following, that each agent is playing with when they interact with other agents. And so if you really want to affect these complex adaptive systems with emergent properties, the kinds of systems that we're mostly interested in changing, right? Really what you're focused on is what are the simple rules? What are the interaction rules between the agents? Right.
So
if you change one of those rules and and all the agents said, okay, now we're working under a different set of rules, then when we interact, we're going to use those different set of rules, then the emergent property will change greatly, massively, sometimes overnight.
Right. So then it would be fair to say that in mechanical systems, leverage points exist and they're a useful concept. In systems that have humans and agents and organisms, the place that you get that influence is in the simple rules that the agents are following. So if you want to change the whole the system, you change the rules that those agents are following.
Yes, and historically, the reason this happened was we had success in mechanical industrial systems, and we took that success as, let's apply this to these more complex social systems. And we took ideas and concepts and in some cases theories that worked in these kinds of systems, and we just kind of like wholesale brought them over.
Right.
And then we said, they work here, they'll work here. And that's just not true. They're very different types of systems.
Okay.
A car is very different than a family.
Yes, and the complexity of it is far different.
And the complexity of it is far different. The adaptivity of it is far different. I mean, your car, generally speaking, isn't going to adapt to your policy changes. It's basically going to do what it does.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Interesting. Why do you think that this kind of thinking, meaning, I guess, systems thinking or DSRP thinking, isn't common sense or popular?
Well, the old saying, common sense isn't very common. So,
It's a pithy answer.
but to go a little deeper than that, I think the more the more interconnected things are, the more complex they get, right? Because there's more interconnectedness, and therefore there's more feedback in the system. There's more, this thing affects this thing, which affects this thing, which comes back around and affects the thing that started the chain in the first place. So the more interconnected things get, the more complex they get, by definition. And the world, the earth, in all of the different levels, whether political, social, manufacturing, you name it, business, internet, the media, is just more interconnected. Flights, every time a flight goes from one place to another, that's a connection point. Anytime a bus goes from one place to another. So we have more buses, more flights, more talking, more phone calls, more emails, more everything.
Yeah.
Right? More social media. We're more connected. The more connected, the more complex. And I think for a long time, if you look at, our evolutionary history, our brain is doing some really pretty complex things because the brain itself is super interconnected, just like this really. But there's a bunch of things that you don't have to pay attention to when you're hunting woolly mammoths, right? When you don't have to worry about, some flu in a lab in China is going to immediately get on a plane on its host and pretty soon be over here, then you're like, oh, geez, I got to worry about what's happening in China. I got to worry about what's happening here. I got to worry about, all of a sudden I have to think about a lot more stuff.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot more perspectives and a lot more opinions and a lot more everything. Well, when I'm hunting woolly mammoths and living in a cave, I don't really have to think all those levels. And so your brain kind of has found a shortcut to ignore certain things.
Really for efficiency.
For efficiency's sake. Yeah. Because it worked. Well, now we're in a world where we're all struggling to deal with this complexity, which is caused by the interconnectedness. And yet we've got a brain that was kind of trained by millions of years of evolution to essentially ignore the other, mostly ignore the whole most of the time. Except for certain things, not zoom in too much to the interconnections of things, and pretty much take, this perspective.
Yes.
Right?
One perspective.
One perspective, which is my perspective of the world. And 9 times out of 10, my perspective of the world might not have been right, but it was good enough. Well, now we have to get more fine-tuned, more fine-grained. We're dealing with more interconnections, more complexity, and we're navigating that complexity.
Yeah.
All we got to do is just become more aware of those other aspects of what the brain is doing so that we can bring that into our consciousness so that we can understand what we're doing and what we're not doing and do more of kind of some of these tendencies that we tucked away in evolutionary time.
I also think there are external factors that work against systems thinking generally in terms of making it common sense or popular. I think, for example, we have a tendency as humans to want to have a single source of cause or blame.
Totally.
We're trained on this linear cause and effect, which also means in school, part of it is schools, right? Schools are sort of teaching us out of nonlinear
100%.
Systemic thinking because we're trained to get an answer. We're trying to find a cause. We're trained to be very not systemic in our thinking. In fact, we're rewarded for that in sort of things like standardized testing and things like that.
Yeah. Now, there's no doubt that on top of that sort of evolutionary laziness that we've picked up along the way, that our systems actually reinforce it. Yeah. Our culture reinforces it. Our education system reinforces it. So systems thinking is definitely we're not being incentivized and trained into it. Although now we're starting to realize, oh, geez, we really need something that's more like systems thinking in order to deal with and navigate this complexity.
Right. And the World Economic Forum confirmed that, actually. And I think several of its
top skills. 10 skill.
What do you think is the web of causality that has led to the state of academia today? That is a meaty question.
So, it's interesting because this is so related to the first question on leverage points, right?